All right, let's roll some dice. Okay, so this time, oops, we just rolled the wrong die. There we go. That's even better. So this time the Crusaders have a lot of command pips. So we have 5 for King Guy, we have 6 for Raymond, and 5 for Balin of Ebeling. Let's see what they can do with that. Maybe Guy can finally get into this fight a little bit. So let's move our camera. I think we'll start at the back of the column this time. We'll see what Count Balin of Ebeling will do. All right, well, with 5 command pips, this is an interesting situation. Well, I think that he probably, believe it or not, I think what he would do here is this guy would actually pull back slightly. He's in zone of control, but he can move 2 MU, so he can pull back to there and form up with his illustrious commander. And the illustrious commander will charge in there. He can do that because remember our command for the Saracen did not have enough movement to get in closer and block that. He was blocking him charging through, but he wasn't anticipating being able to do that. So that's 2 pips out of 5. We got 3 pips left with 3 command pips. What can Balin do with the rest of his forces? Looking at the tactical situation, we have kind of a standoff here. Not much he can do with a couple of pips. I mean, he could move forward, but there's not much reason to. He could put his line back together, so putting these guys here might be useful, but here's the thing. In that particular fight, it doesn't do him a whole lot of good to engage those Jaf Cat because he can't kill them. He could push them back, but he's not going to kill them. They could kill him. So for 1 command pip, he could actually just pull the archers back, and now he has a nicely formed line. Spent 1 command pip. He's still got 2 left, and he doesn't have to fight this turn in a battle where he could lose but not really win. And then I think, yeah, the knights are stuck in combat. Don't see a big advantage there, but there might be some use in bringing some help up here, because he's still got an exposed flank that could be a problem if those guys come running down the hill. So that'll cover his flank a little bit. Couldn't quite get up into formation, but at least he can cover the flank. So that would have been 1, 2, 3, 4. He's got 1 command pip left. Oh boy, what to do with 1 command pip? Well, the only unit he's got that's fast enough that might actually be of some use in this fight over here is this horsebow. So he could bring the horsebow, which go a massive 8 MU, and get them in a position to plug a hole, possibly, in the future. So that's what he's going to do with his 5 command pips. Let's head back to the front of the column and see how the King and Raymond are doing. Well, here we have an awful lot of people that are now in zone of control. So we have a knight, King Guy's knight is trapped there. Raymond's knight is actually trapped by that horsebow zone of control. Raymond himself is being zone of control by some horsebow. So I think we're going to have some limitations on what we can do, but there does seem to be a couple of reasonable choices. So let's see what we can do with these pips. I think we will... Can't leave him in this situation, so he's going to have to turn and attack. I think that makes sense for him to try and make, push this guy back farther. It'll be a 3-3. It's kind of an even fight, although the knight can die if he's doubled. The horsebow cannot, but maybe he can push this horsebow far enough away that he can do something else on the next turn. Because that's really, when knights are fighting horsebow, that's their best hope, is they need to panic enough of the horsebow that they get rid of some of them so that they can deal with the remainder. Otherwise, they're going to end up getting outnumbered and swarmed. Raymond can't do anything because he can't go forward unless he limits it to 2 MU. So probably his best option might be to turn and fight where he is. Use the other 2 units to hold off those guys a little bit longer, or try to hold them off. but help out the knight that's double overlapped in the center. So if Raymond turns here with 1 command pip, and now we've used 2 of his 6, he can help the knight in the center. He'll want to move a little bit farther forward with his other knight because he doesn't have a place to fall back, and at the same time, those guys are not in his zone of control, so that gives him too much freedom of movement. So he needs to slow them down somehow. Okay, so Raymond, Count of Tiberius, has moved himself into position to support the other knight, but he's got a problem with this big mass of mounted coming up on his flank, and he's only got 2 guys in position right now, or 2 units in position to hold them off. And so that's what we're going to attempt to do. The only question is, can we get in there and do what we need to do? So we're going to look at moving these guys up to within zone of control range. Boy, does that put that knight in a really, really bad place. But he doesn't have a lot of options. He's got to put these guys into zone of control, because if he doesn't do that, they're just going to wing over here and help out with the other battle. So what he's got to count on now is he's got to win this battle, and he's got to move forward and make some more space to deploy behind. So it's kind of a no guts, no glory at this point. We can try and bring another archer up. This archer will try and get a little closer to support. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all he's got for movement. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. He only read full 4 pips. He's going to have to wait for that guy. So that's all he can do right now. So he's brought these guys up for support. He's brought the knights up for support. He moved this knight over here. And at this point, I don't see anything else that he can do. He needs to win a couple of these fights and buy himself some space. So what can Guy do to help? Well, that's a good question. So let's see. The king could start to come this way as well, which could be necessary. Or maybe the clearer path would be to try and drive a wedge through the center. He does have to worry a little bit about Saladin's forces coming up on the other side, so that could be an issue as well. Boy, I think that we're going to bring Guy's column up, and we're going to try and do some kind of a deployment and see if we can get some action going on the other side. So what the heck? He's going to charge forward where it looks like he has a place to go. And he's going to bring these knights with him. So we're going to go there and there. So that's 2. That's 2 of his 5 pips. I'm going to count them down because it helps me remember what I've got left to work with. And then the Templars, who do not have the command and control problem, they're going to head over right behind Guy. So that's going to be 3 pips. Man. He's zoned of control issue here. So we're going to move over to that side of the table and see what we can do with that. I'll give you a nice overview of the battlefield as we walk across. Boy, that's a tough situation. But I think with that additional pip, or 3 pips, we're going to move the bow levy up. They can only go about their base depth. But the reason that that's going to be significant is he's going to move and go backwards. So he's actually going to use that zone of control movement allowance to go backwards. The bow levy moved up to join him, and this line will move up. That's 1 additional pip. These are all Guy's men here. So we have 1 command pip, 2 command pips, 3 command pips, that's his 5. So we're going to go ahead and do that for Guy's move. Alright, so now we've got a few combats to resolve. Since we're already at the front of the line here, we'll go ahead and resolve those first. So we've got 2 combats right there to take care of. This is going to be between Saladin and Raymond's forces, and then we'll move to the back line and see how we make out in the back. Okay, so starting with Raymond, who has, as a knight general, he has a 5 versus mounted, no overlap, and the horsebow, which is a 3. I think we'll start there because the whole point of him coming up there was to try and drive this guy off to help out the knight in the center that was fighting valiantly, outnumbered. So Raymond will roll the black dice, white dice for the Saracens, and we have a 4 to 8. So that's a doubling, and remember we talked about the fact that that does not kill the horsebow, unfortunately, because they're going to dance away. Remember, they're only riding in. They're going to ride in and shoot at range and then dance away. So the horsebow is going to back up, but they are going to do a panic move because they have been doubled. So they turn 180 degrees and rear to the enemy. And now they move a full 8 MU away from the enemy. Now, the interesting thing here, they are going to hit, this is one of the few pieces of rough terrain on the table. This is a little bump, which is part of the Horns of Hattin. So what happens is they'll move and they'll stop just short of going 8 MU because they hit the rough terrain. Any part of their movement in rough terrain would reduce their total movement to 3. They've already exceeded 3 MU. They stop at the edge. So they're okay. They didn't get destroyed. If there had been anything behind them, like another unit, for example, that was back here or the edge of the board, then they would have been destroyed. So, but they are out of Raymond's way, and he will charge forward, giving us that space behind that we were hoping to attain for both of these. And then you'll see as we move down, that makes the situation here a little bit better because his 4 is now a 3 because he's only overlapped on one side, and the elite cavalry is going to drop to a 2 because they now have an overlap. So that did exactly what we were hoping, which is it pushed panicked the horsebow, got them out of the fight temporarily, because while that's basically a route move, there's no other requirements for keeping track of that. They're just sitting here. But as you can see, you got to use command pips to bring them back. So that's the penalty. That's the route penalty. Okay. So, next roll. We have our 3 for the knights, black dice for the knights, white dice for the Saracens. We have a 4, unfortunately, a 5 here, that's a 7, to a 7, and a lock. All right, so, but we didn't die. That's the important thing for the knights. They didn't die. Let's head to the other end of the battlefield. So, scanning the battlefield as we go. Once again, Saladin's still not doing anything with his forces, hasn't had the command pips to spare. And we're back here to our heroes of the battle, Balin of Ibelin and the Knights Templar. Well, at least the heroes so far. We'll see if that continues. So, Balin's charged in. He is a knight general, so he gets a 5 versus mounted. He hit these horsebow in the flank, so they're going to start at a 3. They've been hitting the flank, and he brought some help. And because they're on the corner, there's going to be an overlap. So their 3 is going to go down to a 1. So we're going to start here, obviously, because we want to peel these guys off of the Templar if we can. Balin's going to use his yellow dice, and our Saracens on this end will use the green dice. Uh-oh. Okay. Well, sometimes you'd rather be lucky than good any day. So we have a 7 to a 6. Balin will actually be repelled, and he will back up, so he falls back. The horsebow don't move. So that didn't work out like planned. Now the Knights Templar, they started a 5. They go to a 4 because the guys that were supposed to be knocked off of their flank are still there. And then we have our Jaf Cat, which started a 2, and they'll stay at a 2 because they have no negative against them. So it's 4 to 2. Let's see how the Templars do. Okay, so we have a 9 and a 6. So once again, not doubling. And they will charge forward. And, the knights will charge forward following the Jaf Cat, who will fall back 1. So that continues on down the board. A very interesting fight. No more combats, so now we're going to go to the Saracens' turn. Alright, let's see what Saladin can do. Okay, not much. Saladin has 1 for his command pips. We have 5 for the rear, which is probably good. And then we have 5 for the front command. So let's figure out while we're here, can Saladin do anything useful? He's got a Jaf Cat right there, who is probably at this point more in the way than he is helpful. Although he is zone of control by 2 elements. But I think we might actually just pull him back for now because he's really not doing much. Let's look around the battlefield a little bit. So we've got 5 up here. And we have a pretty good chance to maybe pop a knight. So I think that at this point we would turn this horsebow for 1, trapping that knight, and then if we roll well, we might actually get a kill. That takes us down to 4. Boy, it could do the same thing again here, but that puts that cavalry in danger from the knights that will be coming up behind it. But when they're doubled by knights, they do panic, just like the horsebow, so it might be worth taking the gamble on that. Let's take a look at the other end of the field here and see what we want to do. I think we're going to do that too, because, boy, it's just too much of a chance. Well, can we do that? Oh, we cannot do it that way, but we can do it this way. So we have to be careful with that zone of control. We can't swing through his zone of control, but as long as our front edge is completely covering their side edge, that will work. So we're going to try that because it's worth it to try and get a knight. So that's going to take us down to 3. I'd like to bring this guy back, but before I do that, let's look at the other side of the board and see what the tactical situation looks like for the rest of these mounted. Boy. Zone of control here, so we can't do anything too exciting. It's just barely projected onto this horse. And, I think we're going to go in for 1 and slide over. And we're going to bring this guy with. That's 1 pip. And then for the extra command pip, so that was 1 more, so we got 2 left. And I think with that extra command pip, we're going to bring over here, so we get an overlap on both flanks, which is good. We have Jaf Cat lined up against foot, which is what they prefer to fight. We have elite Cav versus knights. Could be a good matchup. So that leaves us with 1 command pip, and with that 1 command pip, bringing the rabble off the hill still doesn't look attractive. I think we're going to turn this guy around. So we use our gauge. We got to go from the farthest moving front corner. So notice, because he's facing the wrong way, it's got to be the farthest moving front corner that we have to measure from. So you measure kind of the diagonal, which means that he could put his base about there. So he can get back and be pretty much in zone of control of the knight, which in this case I want to do, even though I'm the faster unit as the Saracen, because I don't want him turning in on this guy's flank. So I want to put him in zone of control and lock him face forward. So, all right, so I think that's the moves on that end. So down on the other end, once again scanning the battlefield. What can we do down here? We have 5 command pips. And we have lots of activity. We've got guys on the hill we could bring down, but they're not very powerful. We have a lot of problems to deal with here. Well, really interesting. I think we're going to push in here. Part of the reason is that you see the the foot now don't have a place to back up. So they're kind of stuffed. So we're going to push in here, and that's going to be 3 command pips to do that because they were not in formation. So 3 command pips, we push in, and that will put some pressure on this flank, and maybe we can pop this heavy foot, and if we do that, that'll make another hole. This guy's in trouble. So I've got 2 command pips left. He can move to MU in any direction. He can't attack anybody except for Raymond because of the situation with the zone of control. I think he's going to attack. Not because I think it's necessarily that he's going to win, but we're going to do this order in such a sequence that if he loses really badly, I'm hoping this guy will be out of the way. It might put him very close to the edge of the board if he panics, but it might also... Okay, sorry for the brief pause there. As I mentioned, we did move this guy into combat, and not because we thought he was going to win, but because I'm actually kind of hoping that it's going to get him out of trouble one way or another. I mean, he could win. It's not really likely. But he has a problem if this guy's still here, but because of this Jaf Cat Knight interaction, if they lock, he's in trouble. If they don't lock, which is the most likely outcome, either the Knight's going to die or the Jaf Cat's going to pull back. And with that last pip, because I just mentioned that, you know, either the Knight's going to die or the Jaf Cat are going to pull back, I need to get him somewhere where he's not in the way of this potential issue. He's not right now, but he's kind of close. And he's not doing anything. I got 1 pip left. So I think he can't come in and help here. There's not enough room, but he could help here. So he can help out the Jaf Cat. And watch, I'll probably outsmart myself, and that'll be just what he needed to create the lock. So we've done our moves on this end of the table, and now we're going to move to the combat phase. Saracen's turn, so they'll decide the order of the combat. We're down on this end of the table, so I'll get the dice set up, and we'll run these combats first. Okay, so our Knights Templar would be 5, but they're going to go down to 4. Remember, this is my special rule because I'm using these as a independent little general in this event, because Templar should be a little bit better than your average knight, and I did offset that by giving some extra points to Saladin's force. So the Templar's going to be a 4 because he's overlapped. Jaf Cat is going to be a 2. Once again, the yellow die is for Balin, and here we go, and we have 6 to 8. Whoops. All right, so Jaf Cat shatter knights. Did not double them, but they did shatter them, which is not very good for the Crusaders, obviously. And makes the situation a little bit more complicated. The Crusaders now have a problem in that they're getting very close to breaking. So we have both units basically are very close to breaking at this point because they both are 12 points down. So another 4 points worth of kill, and we have a broken command, and then we'll go through what happens there. All right, so now we have the Horsebow and the Balin Knight General. Knight General is a 5. The Horsebow would be a 3, down to a 2 because of this overlap. So we're going to roll. And let's see if Balin... But now, notice that we've cleared our retreat path. One way or another, I was hoping that that path would be cleared. Okay, so we have 4. And we have 8. So the Knights doubled the Saracens. That is, unfortunately, because it's a Horsebow and not a Jaf Cat, what's going to happen is similar to what we had down there. He will back up. He will turn around, and then we better, hopefully I measured this properly. He will run towards the edge of the battlefield, stopping just short of the edge of the battlefield. And the Knight will charge forward, forming up, and that will put him in a much better condition than he was a minute ago. So let's see how our mounted versus foot goes. Oh, and I just realized that I made a terrible tactical error on the part of Saracens. Part of the point of this was to do the combat before I did this knight combat, possibly forcing this guy into a no retreat position. But that's what happens when I get interrupted in the middle of the battle and I don't think clearly. So we're going to continue on. We have a 3 for our heavy foot. We have a 3 for our Jaf Cat. We're going to see if the Jaf Cat can push these guys back. This is the same thing that we did once before. And they don't. Okay, so we have a 7 to a 4. So we're actually going to push them back. Well, that's not good. So that puts our next contest in a little bit of danger. We're going to roll it anyway. So we're going to go with a 2 for this Jaf Cat, which is now overlapped, and a 4 for the archers. So the archers are 4s. Let's just see what happens. Oh, that's not good. 10, 4. The archers doubled the Jaf Cat, which does kill them. Uh-oh. And moves them forward. Well, that's unexpected. But it happens. So in the next contest, I did notice we do have we still have a place to retreat. We have a 3 for our heavies, and we have a 2 for the Jaf Cat because they are now, the horsebow, because the horsebow are now a 1 because they are overlapped. They were a 2, but now they're a 1. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, but they're uphill. That's right. Slightly uphill. So we're going to go with the 2. They still got a slight hill there. So we'll roll that. And we have an 8 to a 5. That's going to make them back up. They're going to end up right about there. So not so good because the Saracen command has now lost 16 points. They've lost 4-point light horse stands, and that is enough to break their command. So this command will be demoralized, and we'll talk about what demoralized does to them on their next combat round. So we're down to the other end of the line, and we're going to see how things are going over there. So we had made our moves to surround the knights, so we'll probably fight these out, and let's see what happens. Okay, so the tactical situation at the front of the Crusader column. We've got some overlapped and potentially in trouble knights and foot over there. And then we have 2 knights that have had their flanks wrapped. So they could definitely be in trouble. So let's start with those. Once again, we have our white die for the Saracens in this area versus... Actually, believe it or not, this particular horsebow is Saladin's. So we will roll Saladin's dice versus the black die. So here we go. Knights are the black. Oh, I guess I should point out that these guys are a 3. And these guys are a 3 because it's horsebow versus knight. Guy on the flank, and down. And the knight did not roll well enough. Was beaten by 1, has no place to go, and he is destroyed. So that puts Raymond at 12 points in losses. Not very good. Okay, it wasn't doubled. Nobody charges. The next one is going to be a 3. However, he does have the advantage in that Raymond, being on this flank, will reduce this horsebow to a 2. So -1 for the overlap, -1 for the overlap. And in this case, that is the white dice, so we'll roll the proper dice. Black is for the knights. And the knight wins, okay? So here's the here's the fun part. So the knight has won, which means that this guy falls back 1 base step. This guy, who was providing the flank wrap, will also fall back 1 base depth. And then here's one of the really fun and interesting. It doesn't happen very often, but it does in this particular situation. When he falls back, he hits the rear of an enemy unit. So he can't fall back all the way, and he is destroyed. This guy is also destroyed, because one thing that will unnerve you like no other is having an enemy back into your rear. So we actually lost 2 units in that particular fight. So that puts Saladin's down 4 points. The forward advance command, Taqi al-Din, is down 4 points. The rear Saracen command is broken. And this is a 3-point unit. So out of the forces from Raymond, he is 1 more kill and he's broken, because he's basically at 15 right now. All right, so this next fight could be very interesting. Let's move over to the other side of the battlefield. So as we look around the front, we can see that we have the outnumbered knight and foot soldiers here. Where do the Saracens want to go first? Well, Jaf Cat is going to be a 3. The heavy foot would be a 3. Their overlap. Let's see if we can make something happen there. So, Jaf Cat versus foot. They're a 3. The foot would be a 3, but they're overlapped, so they're going to be a 2. And we're going to roll this. Black die is the foot. They got a 4, and we have a 6. So that's going to back them up, which is exactly, what we wanted, or kind of what we wanted, because now we have the double overlap on the knights. So the knights would be a 4. They're going to go down to a 2 because of the overlap. And then our elite cavalry that they're facing will be a 3. So let's roll it. Knights being black again. Uh-oh. 4, 8. Wow. So the knights managed to double the elite horse. And this is going to be another one of those panic moves. Although I didn't really check to see if they had enough space this time. Let's find out what happens. So in this particular case, they've been doubled. They will panic. So they will pass through the open order behind them. That's their fallback. Then they will turn around. And now they will run 6 towards the edge of the board, which I think 6 will keep them on the board, but just barely. So let's see. Yep, oh, no problem. They're just fine. So they're going to run towards the edge of the board, panicking right past the village. So, and of course the knights, because they won and doubled, they will always charge forward, thus leading them into a trap. So they were able to panic those guys, get them out of there, but it didn't necessarily put them in a better position. Interesting. Okay, so that was the turn for the Saracens, and now we're going to move on to the turn for the Crusaders and see if the Crusaders can pull some kind of victory out of what, as you can see, has become a very, very messy battlefield. Okay, we're rolling for Crusader command points once again in this center square. It's done pretty good for us so far. It could have been better, but not bad. So Guy gets 6, Balin gets 3, and we get 2 for Raymond. Well, let's take a look here. What can Raymond and Guy do in the front to try and figure their way out of this trap? Let's figure out what our options are. Well, let's see. So Raymond has 2 command pips. And he is in zone of control. His general stand is in zone of control of 2 enemies. That means he can pick which enemy to engage. So at this point, because of the situation with this knight over here, I actually am going to have him engage here. So he's going to go here. We're going to try and win this battle against the overlapped horsebow, drive that horsebow off, and then help out the guy next to him, who's now facing the general. And the general is going to be a +1, so it's even tougher. That leaves it a little thin here, but he's got another command pip that he could use. And I think we're going to use that command pip to bring an archer, like we wanted to do earlier, over into some sort of position to support this flank. So that's Guy's 2 command pips. We're not going to do anything with that Knight in the Sun. There's no reason to charge in. He's not going to necessarily win that fight because he can't trap that that elite cav. Now, King Guy has a lot of command pips. So, what can King Guy do? At this point, I think we will probably try and bring some help up to the front. Let's see if we have enough room to fit in there. We do not. We can't go in there. He could take on the Jaf Cat. Probably not the smartest move. We could bring this line forward and risk the Beau Levy versus Saladin. Wow, that would be really exciting if successful. I think what he's going to do at this point is bring the Hospitallers out and form up here for security purposes. Bring another unit here. And then let's see if he's got the movement. Can he get on this flank? He'll be just barely. Doesn't leave him any place to run away, but at least trying to secure this movement. It's probably not the smartest move, but we're going to count on the Saracens having more things to do and not being able to take advantage of that. Okay, so that's Guy's move. It's a little bit defensive. So that was 1, 2, 3. He's got a couple more pips left, and I think command point wise, I think we've got to do this just because we've got to put pressure on the Saracens somewhere else to make them use command pips. So he's going to charge. Oh, that's right. These guys are too slow. Oh, that would be so funny though. Well, they're still going to come forward, so they're going to come forward there too, because it does put these guys. It puts Saladin in zone of control from some lowly Beau Levy, thus dictating what he can do. I think we'll leave those guys back as a flank guard, just so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves. So that was another. That was 4 pips. He's got 1 left. With his 1 remaining pip, I think we will turn these spear around because I think we're going to need them over here potentially. Oh, that's all he can do with that 1 remaining pip. This, unfortunately, this was not his archer. Otherwise, he would have liked to commanded him. But we used our 2 pips somewhere else. Okay, Balin. Balin is fighting a demoralized enemy, which is really good for him, because it's going to make his life a little bit easier. And the question now is, what does he do with his 3 command pips? Well, I think he is going to swing in here and go general on general. He's going to bring some help if he can. So he's going to, let's see if we can get this guy over here. Not quite. So I'm going to bring him over to here as far as he can make it. So that puts him at a slight disadvantage there, although the general for the demoralized command will be at a -1, because that's one of the problems with being demoralized. However, remember, even though this guy's in zone of control, he can scoot 2 MU. So that's going to kind of make that overlap situation even. And it puts Balin in a possibility to catch the general. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's his 3 command pips. So we're ready to do our combat. And since we're down on this end, we'll talk a little bit about demoralization. So I'm using the Grand Triumph rough draft rules to play out this game. And in the Grand Triumph rules, when you play a 48-point game, 16 points demoralize the command, the game's over because you've won. When you play this triple size, we're using 144 points. And so a command doesn't evaporate or doesn't end the game because one command loses 16 points or loses its fighting effectiveness. But it does get demoralized. So what we've done with the draft rules, at least what we're using right now, is these guys will all fight at a -1. And they have to be given a command every turn, either to stay where they are, to move, or they will start to leave the board. They'll start to route off the board, heading in a direction away from the enemy towards the nearest board edge. So they also, being that they fight at -1, we have the general. The general is a, normally he's a 3, +1 for the general, but he's -1 demoralized, so he stays a 3, down 1 for the overlap. That makes him a 2. Okay. The Knight General is going to be a 5, down 1 for the overlap. That makes him a 4. So there's a good chance that we can at least push him off of... and he's still got a place to fall back, it looks like, but he might be able to panic him towards the edge of the board, which is good. But 7 versus 7, but he did not. So that's a lock. So nothing happened there. So in the next round, when we roll the command pips for this Saracen command, you'll get an idea of how that demoralization works and how the routing off the table in Grand Triumph can happen. So let's move down around the table. Let's get looking at our extremely messy battlefield. And the only other combats that we have right now are 2 knights that charged into those Saracen horse, once again getting themselves deeply embedded into the Saracen line and possibly into trouble. So we have Raymond and his other knight unit, and I think we'll roll Raymond first because our hope is that we'll push him back and take the overlap off of one side. And we've got an overlap on this horsebow right now. So the horsebow would have been a 3, goes to a 2. Raymond is a 5 because he's a knight general. And we're going to roll our dice for these commands, and we're going to see what happens next. Okay, got our black and our white dice here. Black is for Raymond's command. Uh-oh. Look at that. 6 to 6, a lock. So nothing happens. That leaves him in a very precarious position, not really where he wanted to be. All right, so our next knight, he is going to be a 2, because he starts at a 4, double overlapped, in a little bit of trouble. Fighting a elite cav general who starts at a 3 and goes up to a 4. So this is not quite as good for the knights, but let's see what happens. Okay, so we have a 9, and we have a 6. So no doubling, no death for the knights, but they do get pushed back, which isn't so bad. This elite cav is not impetuous, doesn't move forward. And that's it for our combat this round. Yep, scanning the board. So as you can see, we have the knights desperately trying to punch their way through the front. The rear guard, which was supposed to be a holding action, has actually broken a hole, and probably if everybody was closer to the rear of the column, they could have exited off that way. So we may have a historical ending where Balin of Ebeling escapes from the battle, but everybody else gets decimated. So we're going to go ahead and roll the Saracen command pips, and then we'll talk about what happens with that demoralized command in the rear. Okay, very important command pip roll. We'll see why in a minute. Uh-oh. Saladin is obviously shaken by the threatening bow levy. Okay, this is going to be an interesting experiment. So we have 2 for our front command, which is heavy in the thick of the fighting. We have 2 for Saladin. We only have 1 for our demoralized command, and we're going to show you why that's a problem. So, when you have a command that's demoralized, essentially if you don't give it a command, if you don't give the stand or a group a command, then it routes. And the problem that we have is that the command radius of this general is also reduced to half. So 1 pip we can give a command. Now, one of the reasons we went after the general in that last round is if we'd killed him, this would be no command would be given at all because the general would be dead. But with only 1 pip to command, you'll notice that he's too far away to even command the group on the hill. So he can't even give those guys a command because his radius of command went from 16 to 8 MU. So these guys are going to route. So he doesn't have to hold himself because he is in combat. That's one thing that's somewhat useful. And he has this other guy helping him here. A tough choice, but I think at this point he's going to use the 1 pip to hold this guy in place. And by doing that, that means that everybody else is going to perform a route move, which is basically going to run them off the table. So, for example, this guy here is just going to leave. And then we'll get the measurement stick out and we'll show you how the other ones will perform their route move. We'll actually walk through the QRS on that. Okay, so what we're using for this game is Grand Triumph. These are rough draft rules available at the Washington Grand site, and it has, and this is becoming significant because we now have a demoralized command, but it has in here everything that you need to play a triple-size battle, just like a tournament setup like the regular game. So it does go through setting up the larger game board, how to deploy the terrain. There's more terrain available. And there's even some terrain cards that you can get for a longer, narrower battlefield. This is a historical battlefield that I built to the map for Hattin, so it doesn't use that part of the game, but it does use the all-important demoralize commands. So now that we are demoralized, we go down to this route section. A stand that is forced to route must perform the following steps. It must fall back. It turns so it is directly facing its own base edge with its front parallel to that edge. And then it's going to make a full move. It must make a route move, which is equivalent to a full tactical move in the direction it's now facing. So we don't have a base edge per se in this particular scenario because we have this rounded enemy. So what we have is facing away from the enemy and running for your life. So these guys here on the hill are all going to turn around. They're also no longer going to be in a group because they lose their group integrity. The units that move 5, which are the skirmishers and the light foot, will not quite but nearly exit the board. This one will exit the board, so the light foot will exit the board. And the reason this is important is because, remember I mentioned at the beginning of this game that when you lose half of your points on the table, your army is broken. Well, these guys still count as points on the table until they disappear. So even though this army's demoralized, any points that this general can hold on the table will help maintain the army, and maybe Saladin and the other command can make something happen up there. So falling back, turning around, falling back, turning around. I think I didn't fall back on these guys, did I? So they would actually be closer. Just realized. They should have fallen back first. So they're going to move right into the village. So they're quite a bit closer to the edge of the board. Yeah, they're nearly gone off the edge of the board. So these guys have fallen back, turned around, and now they will run their full 8. And he will run his full 8, which doesn't nearly, but not quite, gets him to the edge of the board. And we're holding this guy to see if the general can do something here. So yeah, that's what happens. And as you can see, the Saracen command falls apart real fast once all of the troops are demoralized and start running away. So that's the Grand Triumph rules that we're using for a demoralized command. Okay, so that's the move for the Saracen's Demoralize command. Now we're going to go to the front of the battlefield, do our other move, and then we'll come back here and do our combats. Okay, well sadly we only got 2 command pips here, which is not as good as we would have liked. So what we're going to try and do is see if we can make something happen here. Because remember I mentioned I've got a knight that's kind of in trouble. So we're gonna use our 2 command pips. We're going to go right there and try and pop a knight. Because if we can kill that knight, that's out of Raymond's command. That would break Raymond's command and would help a lot on the Saracen side. So that's their 2 command pips. Saladin. Well, he's only got 2 command pips. He's got a Jaf Cat there. He's got some Lightfoot there that are about to get run over by Hospitaller Knights. But he can't just sit here and take it from these bow levies. So I think for 1 command pip, he's going to go in. Why not? And for another command pip, these guys have 6 movement. Let's see if they can get there. It's a little bit stretching it. Yeah, we're gonna kind of wheel, charge forward, and put them into combat. So they can get there as well. So for his 2 command pips, he's kind of going all in with his mounted against this infantry because things are starting to look bad, and the Crusaders might actually escape if he doesn't do something. So that's our moves there. Now we're going to go back and roll our combats for Balin and the 1 remaining general down here from the Saracen side. So as I mentioned, we have the demoralized general. He's still demoralized, maybe even more so. He starts at a 4. Demoralized puts him down to a 3 and a 2 for the overlap. So he's going to be a 2. The knight, he starts at a 5. He's down to a 4 because he has an overlap from the other Jaf Cat that we held on the board. Yellow dice for Balin, green dice for the Saracens. He has a 7 to 3, so he doubled the general. That's going to be enough to kill him, and Balin will charge forward in victory. And that pretty much does it for this command. So, if the Saracens don't make something happen on the other end of the board, the Crusaders are actually going to change history and escape from Hattin. So let's see. Oh, let's do this one first because it's not involving the commander of the army. So the first place we're going to go before we lose our advantage is we want to try and start here, because with a 3 to a 4, we might get lucky. And the advantage would be that we can bounce him and kill him. Remember, the knight can't kill the elite cav or the horsebow in a straight fight, so they're not really risking anything. They've got a place to run. He has a place to run. He has a place to run. Black die for Raymond's Knights. Oh no. So we have a 10 to a 4. So doubled, backs up, turns around, and moves a full 8, running right up to the edge of the Horns of Hattin. So we have that situation. Alright, so let's see what happens with the next one. Now we have a 2 to a 4. So here's our 2, because he's overlapped. We have a 4. We're using Guy's dice. So let's see what Guy's knight can do. Oh, and 4 to 9. Same thing, backs up, turns around, and he's going to end up right next to his buddy, but they're not in formation. So chase those guys off. Oh, and by the way, both knights are going to charge forward. Didn't change that combat because he's already overlapped. So that's what knights do to horsebow. Panic them. And now that they're panicked and out of position, the hope is that they can do something with their newfound freedom, like maybe gang up over here. So we're going to go to the next combat here, and we'll see if Saladin can redeem himself by killing some hapless bow levy. Okay, so finally, Saladin is going to go in here and show everybody how it's done. Or at least that's what he hopes. So let's see what we have here. We have elite cav versus archers, so +3, +4. Elite Cav versus Heavy Foot, +3/+3. Elite Cav General, +4 versus Bow Levy, which is a 3 and they shatter. And then Elite Cav versus Knight, so it's a 3/4. So I think we're going to start off with Saladin because he's got a 4, and those hapless Bow Levy are only going to be a 3, and he shatters the Bow Levy, so this should be a walkover for him, right? Let's see how it goes. We'll start there for all the marbles. Well, he got a 6, which is a 10, and the Bow Levy only have a 7. That does shatter the Bow Levy, but does not double them, but it does shatter them. This comes out of Guy's command. That's the first loss for Guy. We'll put those up on top of the crater. Okay, so that makes the other fights a little bit better. So we're going to have a 3 for our Elite Cav, and our Knights are going to be a 3 now because of the overlap created by the hole, and we'll roll that one next because it's not affected by the others. Oops, that one's cocked. Can't stack a die on top of it. Let's see what they get. Okay, so we have a 6 and we have a 4. Yeah, that 6 would have been better, but it was technically, I would have ruled that a cocked die. So we have 6 to 4. That's going to back the Knights up. 1 base depth. We better measure that. This is going to get a little bit. This is going to get a little bit important in here in a minute. All right, so they back up the base depth. We'll start here then because we have an advantage. We've got a 3 to a 2. We'll try and peel those off so we can give the archer get a better odds against the archer. Okay, and we have another cock to die. I'll roll that in the center here. So we have 6 and 4, and that's going to push them back. And now we'll have a 3 and a 3 because of the overlap. So the archers go down from 4 to 3 with a possible for shatter. We'll roll in the center here. We've got better luck with that. Oh no! So we only have a 5 to an 8. Fortunately, they did not double them because archers can actually kill the Elite Cav. They didn't double them, but they did beat them severely, and they will back up. Okay, so that's the end of the Saracen's turn, and Saladin did redeem himself by eliminating those Bow Levy, who dared to threaten him, and we're going to go on to the Crusaders' turn and see what happens next. Okay, Crusader, Guy's roll for command. All right, we have 3 for Guy, 3 for Raymond, and 2 for Balin. So let's figure out what we can do with those command pips. Let's start in the back with Balin, because he's been doing rather well. He has 2 command pips, and he basically has destroyed the enemy command for all practical purposes. The general is dead. He has no groups, so there's a good chance that most of these units are going to run right off the table. He's got a zone of control issue here with those Jaf Cat, but I don't actually think he wants to fight any of these guys. He wants to start moving his forces against Saladin. He needs to start turning these guys around and move against the enemy that's still a viable or a much more serious threat. So I think he would use these 2 command pips to spin his forces around and start getting engaged with Saladin's forces and trying to put pressure on him. Okay, so in an attempt to do that, we're going to put this horsebow, who we thought we needed over here, and we're going to put him right back where he was. That's 1 command pip, forms up that line nicely so that we can face off some of the forces of Saladin. And then, looking at the situation here, we have this annoying Jaf Cat that is putting him into a zone of control, so can't pull the knight out very easily. But what we're going to do, this is probably foolish, but we're going to put Balin in combat with him, and we're going to see if we can make him go away. Yes, the Jaf Cat can shatter, but we're hitting a demoralized Jaf Cat in the flank with the Knight General. What's the worst that could happen, right? Okay, so now we have Guy's turn. and Raymond up in the front, and they need to make some stuff happen and try and break loose from what's going on here. Now Raymond can't really afford another loss because another loss will break his command, so they need to try and make something happen with the enemy before experiencing that loss. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to try and put some pressure on Saladin's forces by moving this group for... wait. This guy belongs to Raymond. So that's what we'll do. We'll bring in the Knight General for 1. And then we will bring our archers in. That's going to be one of his command pips, one of Raymond's. And we've used one of Guy's. So that's 1, 2. We couldn't get the archers close enough to really do anything with the skirmishers. So putting them where they are really just puts pressure on these guys and keeps them off the flank. And I think we're going to charge the Hospitallers in because they haven't seen any action. They'll be at a -1, but they do shatter Lightfoot. And if they bust these Lightfoot, that'll put them in a really good position to help out the flank to endanger the flank of Saladin. So that's going to be 2. So that leaves Guy de Lucerne another command pip. Looking at the situation over here, we've got a horsebow that's kind of dangerously close to the king's flank. So I think what we would probably do is we'll use this pip to bring one of Guy's forces back over. That's this guy here. Yeah, he'll come over. In case you haven't noticed, the reason I look at the backs is I have little colored dots to try and help me remember which command goes with which. But he's going to have this guy come over and join him. That accomplishes 2 things. Creates the double overlap on the javelin cav, and also puts this horsebow into a zone of control so that he can't swing in and hit the Knight General on the flank. So that's it for King Guy's pips, but he's going to try and get himself a Jaf Cat victory here. Maybe he can double him. And then we have Raymond, who has... He doesn't really want to go more into the pitched battle right now. He'd actually prefer probably to hold off. He's got 2 command pips. I think he's going to put this guy into a zone of control while making sure that he has room for a recoil fallback here. And then we're going to move this archer up and form a line here. In case they come in, it'll at least give him support. So, and puts the Jaf Cat in, or the horsebow in his zone of control. So, once again, I'm using the slower troops. Once they can get close enough, we're using the slower troops to take away the speed of the faster ones by getting in closer and putting them in that zone of control where they have to worry about reacting to the enemy. So let's go ahead and do our combats. I'm going to start at the back again because it should be the easy and quick combat with Balin, who bravely charged into the flank of a demoralized Javelin Cavalry. The Javelin Cavalry starts at a 2. Charged in the flank and demoralized. He's a 0. Balin, he is a Knight General, fighting mounted. So he's going to be a 5. Oops. Let's use our colors the way we've been. So 0, and Balin will be a 5. All right, so here we go. And we have 4 to 9. This one's doubled. Balin will charge forward because knights always do. And that kills off the Jaf Cav. Which is good because that means that we don't have any enemies threatening these forces. So for the most part, we'll be able to turn them and head back into the fight, in theory. And Balin's still doing pretty good. He still doesn't want to lose any stands of knights, but he's got a little bit of room to fight still. Heading back over here to to the front of our line, we have, oh, let's see. King G hasn't seen any action. Let's let him roll first. So the king will be a 5 versus mounted. He's a knight general. The Jaf Cat would have been a 2, but it's double overlapped. So the Jaf Cat is going to be a 0. So we have the king, and we have Saladin's red dice. So red is for the Saracens, blue for the king. And he gets a 9 to a 6. Does not double, so that won't kill him, but it will push him back. So the king will charge forward, which will help us set up the place. Should put him directly in line with that guy. And he falls back. So that's for that combat. Not quite as good as he was hoping, but he did push him back. Lightfoot versus mounted would normally be a 2. So he's a 2. The knight would normally be a 3, a +1 for these hospitallers. They're similar to the Templars, so they're going to have that special rule. That's actually a rule I kind of borrowed from the Triumph Fantasy or Battle Card system, where we make a unit deadly and a general, and so I basically, by making them deadly and making them a general, I'm essentially making them a slightly higher point unit. But we use that in our, when we do our Fantasy Triumph. There's certain units that can have little boosts like that. So he's going to be a 4 down to a 3 because of the skirmisher on the flank. But knights do shatter Lightfoot in the open, so he's hoping to get lucky that way. And he did. So we have a 6 to a 3. Not only did he shatter him, but he doubled him. Of course, once again, knight's always charging forward. That opened up that nice shot at the flank, so Saladin's got something to worry about on that side. And Saladin's also starting to rack up a few losses, so that could become a problem eventually. That's it for that combat. We still have a combat over here with our locked horsebow. So we have a horsebow, which is going to be a 2 because they're overlapped by another knight. Oops, changing dice again. Our horsebow, which are a 2. And our knight general, which is going to be a 5 versus mounted. So that's Raymond. And the knights are black, Saracen's white. And we have a 9 to a 5. We did not quite double them. That's going to push them back. And unfortunately, the knights charge forward, which we really wouldn't have wanted to do at that point, but we will have to. Okay, so that's all of our combats. That was the Crusaders' turn. And now we got to roll for Saladin's command pip. Okay, time to roll for Saladin's command points. So let's see what he gets. Oh boy, first time he's had any serious command pips. This isn't going to be very useful, but then again, this command is pretty much melted. But 6 and 6, that's definitely going to be useful. So let's take a look at the tactical situation. So Saladin has finally started to engage here, mostly with foot, a few knights. He does have a danger to his flank. Taqi al-Din is forward blocking command here. Not heavily decimated, but certainly dispersed by the charge of the knights. Still some troops up on the hill. They don't typically do much in this battle, but we may have to pull them in. Saladin's still got plenty of mounted left. The decimation of the rear command and 2 command pips means that we can hold 1 unit on the table and everybody else is going to end up leaving the table. So we might hold that Jaf Cat, for example, but everybody else is going to flee. So let's figure out what we're going to do with these command pips. First of all, as I mentioned, so we only got a 2 and we have no general. So we can give exactly 1 command. So the command that we're going to give... well, he can't quite get there, but just to annoy Balin, we'll put him right there and put Balin in zone of control with the Jaf Cat, just to slow him down. These guys are all going to leave the table, all of the foot from this command, so they're effectively going to be off the table. So they're all going to disappear. They run off the table, and that means that we have a little over 48 points with the dead on the other end towards victory for the Crusaders. If they kill 72 points or get rid of 72 points, that will break the army. So Balin's command, pretty good shape still, and free of any enemy except for this one lone javelin cavalry. But he's not really in a position to help much, so he needs to start turning his forces around. Saladin is going to have to make something happen, and he can possibly pop in here and kill enough to break Balin's command, which would be helpful. Maybe he can cause some trouble for Guy. And then Taqi al-Din's command has had overwhelming numbers and outnumbered the knights up here, but hasn't been able to take advantage of it. He's had several of his elite cav and horsebow run off, and now he's got to bring them back. So that's our current tactical situation. Let's go maneuver our troops for Saladin and Taqi al-Din's command. Okay, so we're looking at Saladin's tactical options. Well, he's got a small problem on this end. Not exactly sure he has a lot of good choices there. He's got a Jaf Cat that's a little bit of trouble. He's got a skirmisher in a little bit of trouble. He's got a knight about to swing around on his flank. So he may have to do something here. Here probably has at least one good option, which is to bring in this elite cav. So that's going to be one command pip. And then to bring a horsebow over to help. That's 2 command pips. That leaves him 4. That gives him a double overlap with a chance to shatter, which is useful. Then he's got to decide what he wants to do here. That Hospitaller breaking through is definitely a problem. Well, let's rethink that for a second. He could charge forward and force a contest with that knight, and then hopefully if he wins that, have something to work with. Getting a kill on Balin's command would be useful because one more kill would push him over the edge, but he's not really in a position to take advantage. Those Lightfoot takes 2 pips to bring them out still because they're out of line of sight. Well, I think probably bringing his mounted over might be more useful. Or at least bringing the Jaf Cav over for now. So that's going to take him down to 3. That gives him something to stand off those archers on the end. And then, what to do? A Hospitaller, a Skirmisher, a Jaf Cav. Well, if he pushes the Skirmisher in, the Skirmisher is +2 versus the archers. Actually, pushing the Skirmisher in would help the Jaf Cav, and the Skirmishers can hold their own against the archer. There'll be a +2, and there'll be a +2, so that might not be a bad solution there. That takes him down to 2 command pips. This is going to be a tough call, but I think at this point he's going to keep pushing because he's got to make something happen. So we're going to use another command pip to go forward. That then puts pressure on the knights, so that leaves him 1 command pip. And for the last command pip, I think we'll go ahead and bring this guy forward because he can't be killed by the heavy foot, but he might kill him. So if we do this one first, double overlap the archers, possibility that this guy will be in an overlap situation with the archers gone, yeah, he might kill the heavy foot. He could get lucky. It's not great, but it's an option. So that uses his command pip. So he's going to push his luck and try and cause some damage to Guy's command here against the foot and the one knight. What do we do here? So Taki Aldine, he's got lots of fun going on. He needs to bring all of those panicked horsebow. You can see kind of relative to distance. He needs to bring them back into the fight. The panicked horsebow and the elite cab, he really needs them back in the fight. He's got 6 pips. Should be plenty to command. This knight's got him in Zoc. He doesn't have to fight that knight right now, but what he could do, moving his 2 MU only, so coming from there to there, he can get into overlap, which will help out his Jaf Cat ally. So that's 1 command pip. Now we've got 5 more to deal with. So looking at our options over here, we definitely need to bring some of these forces back into play. And it looks like we can get at least back into formation. That's another command pip, and that's another command pip. We don't have enough to actually reach that knight, but we do have enough to make a line right there. So that's going to be 2 more command pips. So that leaves him 3 more to work with on this end. This guy only goes 6. We could spin him around and get him in position to try and get back into the fight. So that leaves more command pips. Does he want to use them? That's the question. The horsebow can be killed by the archers. We're not very excited about that matchup. He could go in with that knight and create another overlap with his general. I think what we'll do, this guy here that we were moving, he's going to turn around, but he's going to make sure that he's actually over 1 base step. So his turnaround, put him over 1 base step. That's going to leave the elite foot general room for a panic move if he should have to make it, and then he's going to go ahead and push in. So that gives him an overlap. Still had the overlap here, which he would have had anyway, although we'll fight this one first. Might actually pull the overlap off. And then we're going to have an overlap here. So that's what we're going to do there. So we've got no combat down on Balin's end. Just a zone of control from the Jaf Cat. We have some combat for Saladin, and we have some combat here for our Taki Aldine blocking force. Let's go over and do Saladin first. Okay, so it's really unrelated to the other combats with the infantry. This combat with the knight, we're going to do this first. So we have our 3 for the elite cav. We would have a 4 for the knights, but the knights are overlapped, so they're going to be a 3, so it's an even up. And one of the reasons for taking this fight is the elite cav, once again, cannot be killed in a straight fight with the knights. They would just panic if they were doubled. So let's see what we can get here. Okay, we have a 5 to a 7, so that's going to back them up. And that's going to bring the knights forward, and well, not much different than we were before we started this fight. So now we're going to move down the line. We're going to do our archer combat next, because the archers are double overlap now. And if something bad happens here and they back off, we might lose that overlap. So we'll go ahead and do the overlap first. So our elite cav will have a 3, and our archers would be a 4, but they're double overlap down to a 2, and they are shattered by the mounted in the open. So that's why we're hoping to get something here. The Saracens. Okay, so we have an 8, and we have an 8. So we have a lock. Nothing happens. All right, so moving on to the heavy foot, we have a 3. They're down to a 2 because they are actually overlapped by the archers. The heavy foot are overlapped by Saladin, so they're going to be a 2. So it's 2 to 2. But once again, the heavy foot cannot kill the elite cavalry in a straight fight because they're going to be standing off shooting with bows and stuff, so they're going to actually pull back if they get doubled. We have an 8 to a 4, which they are doubled. So in this case, unlike the knights, which will panic them, this will actually be an evade. And so an evade is going to be simply that they're going to pull back a base depth, and now they're going to go back 4 MU, and that 4 MU is pretty much straight back, avoiding anything they couldn't pass through or any enemies, so they're not going to be destroyed if they ran into something. They would try to go through it or around it, but it's an evasion. So, and the heavy foot, because they doubled, will actually charge forward, chasing after them. So elite cav, when fighting heavy foot, things that don't have missile weapons or don't have horses, don't panic, and they're not destroyed by doubling. They actually evade, just like the skirmishers. And the Jaf Cat also do that from the heavy foot, but Jaf Cat can be caught by elite foot. If we had elite foot out there, the Jaf Cat could actually be destroyed. So that was Saladin's turn. Let's go over here and see if he can do, or his forces can do any better on the other end of the line. So we only have 2 combats. Once again, looking at a very messy battlefield. So we have 2 combats here. And I think the obvious choice is to do this one first. Well, maybe. It's likely that we'll lose. It's likely that the horsebow will fall back, best case, maybe panic. But if they do, that means this knight will charge forward and it'll pull the overlap off of the elite cav general. So I think that's the one that we're going to do first. So we have Raymond, who's headed for the hill, just like he did historically with his knights, to charge down the hill. And he's going to be a 5. And the horsebow are going to be a 3. So we have a 3 to a 5. Black dice for Raymond, white dice for the Saracens, and here we go. Okay, so we have a 4 to a 7, which is exactly what the Saracens wanted, because it's going to back him up 1 base step, and he is going to exactly charge past the elite cav general. So didn't double him, didn't panic him, but he charges forward, takes the overlap off the elite cav general. So the knights are going to be a 4 overlap down to a 3 for our next combat. And the elite cav general is going to be a 3 and back up to a 4 without the overlap. So let's see what we get here. This time we have a 3 plus 4 is 7. And that should have been a 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. Now, they didn't double. They almost did. That would have been nice for them. But they do beat them. So these knights are going to charge back 1 base step and end up just past the heavy foot. And they don't charge forward. So that's it for the Crusader Turn. So not terribly exciting, but Raymond is getting himself into more and more trouble here. Alright, so it will be the Crusaders' turn next, so we're going to go roll the command pips for the king, and we'll see what the Crusaders can make happen. Okay, here we go for the Crusaders' command pips. Command points for the Crusaders. Oh, not so good. Guy gets 2. Balin gets 3, which could be useful, and Raymond only gets 1. Well, that's not what he was hoping for. So what can Guy do with 2 command pips? Okay, before we jump to the command pips for the Crusaders, we did forget 1 combat over here, and we better do this one because it could be very important. So we have the Jaf Cat versus the king himself. The Jaf Cat is not overlapped, so it'll be a 2 versus mounted. And the king is overlapped, so he would normally be a 4 plus 1 for the general, minus 1 for the overlap, so he's going to be a 4. And I think that they're going to want to do that one first, because this is who knows what's going to happen, and it's only going to make the situation worse. And the Jaf Cat can shatter, so if they could get lucky. So we're going to roll that one. The red one is for Saladin's forces. 3 to 6. Uh-oh. Doubled. Okay, so Jaf Cat is doubled. It is destroyed. And the king charges forward. That's not good for anybody on the Saracen side. So now, this is going to go to a 1. And archers versus foot, close combat, will be a 2. And we'll roll that. We have a 5, and we have a 4, so they'll actually back them off, which is not bad for the skirmishers. Interesting. So now we're going to go back to those command pips that we just rolled, because I had forgotten to do that combat, which turns out was quite significant. And we have command pips for Gius 2, Raymond 1, and Balin 3. So what to do, what to do? Well, let's see. Let's look at Raymond first. Since he only got 1 command pip, he doesn't have a lot of options. I think that he is just going to form back up, thus putting this knight and these units into one group. So now he has a single group there, so you move this knight up, and he has one group. He's got a combat over there that's going to continue. He doesn't really want to face that, doesn't have much choice, but he's going to stand off there. No advantages. So that's Raymond's command point. Guy, he's got a couple of possibly tasty choices here. The question is, which one does he want to take? So we've lost 11 points out of Saladin's command. So we've got to make some more things happen if we really want to break Saladin's command, because he actually has a 4 points extra, so he's got a 52-point command. So it's going to take a little more to break him. But I think that with one of the command pips, we have to take this flank charge, because that's one of the ways that the knights can catch the elite cav, is by wrapping them, so they can't do their panic move and run away. And then the question is what to do over here with only 1 command point left. So if he goes after the horsebow isn't trapped, so he could panic it, but he's not going to kill it. And it also kind of sends him in the wrong direction. The danger of this, if he turns in between these two, he's not going to have a place to fall back if he loses, but he's got to make sure he doesn't lose. Doesn't have enough command pips to bring help, but these two are in Zoc, so this guy is keeping this guy from running around doing whatever he wants. So this might look a little strange, and you're kind of picking on the weaker unit, but I think I would do this, because I can run that skirmisher down and then be in a position to come over here and help where the main fight is probably going to take place. It does leave Raymond a little high and dry, but you know, he's been doing pretty good so far on his own. So I think that's what I would do at this point with 2 pips, only 2 command points. Possible kill here, possible kill here. Now let's go to Balin. So what's Balin going to do? He's got 3 command pips. He's got this annoying Jaf Cat. Truly annoying Jaf Cat. He does have an opportunity here. I think he's going to take it. So this is not Balin's command. These are the blue dot. Those are part of Guy's command in this standoff. But I think I'm going to run this horsebow up and hit this unit in the flank. So that's a flank contact, front covering the side. Because he's a +3. Jaf Cat versus mounted, normally a +2. Got hit in the flank, makes him a +1. And he has no place to go. So if the horsebow wins, this guy's dead. So that might be another way to get a point off of Saladin. We could maybe break his command in this 1 turn. We thinking too far ahead. Okay, he can't stand this, so he's going to go in and hit him. That's his second command pip. Now the question is what to do with his third. Does he have any really good options? He's got slow-moving infantry. They're not going to get into the fight this turn. Oh, I think we're going to bring the other knight up to help because he's in range. That'll give him an extra command point. Puts him in a group. Try and finish that guy off. Okay, so we're going to start down on this end and roll this out and see if we can get rid of this really annoying Jaf Cat on the end. So here's our numbers. 5 for Balin, the Knight General. Jaf Cat starts at a 2, demoralize, makes him a 1, overlap, makes him a 0. So it's 5-0. Green dice for the Saracens, yellow dice for Balin. So Balin has an 8, and the Jaf Cat has a 4. He did double him. He kills him, finally gets rid of him. And that is the end of that command. So that command's gone. All the units have scurried off the table or been destroyed. Alright, so that won't be a problem anymore, and maybe if this fight goes on long enough, he'll be able to turn around and help out his co-Crusaders. We have one fight over there with Raymond and the Horsebow. So let's go ahead and let's move over there and do that one. Then we'll go to the main event, which is going to be Saladin's forces in the center with Guy. So as we move around the table, we have our Horsebow at 3, our Knight General at 5, okay, so we have our Horsebow at 3, our Knight General at 5, and we're going to roll it off. Balin's black dice, the Saracens are the white. Okay, and we have 8 to 5. So we have a similar result in that we basically are going to back him up. Put a die there to mark it. Pull him back. It's starting to get important because he's about to get pushed back into the city, the village there. So Balin follows up. Or sorry, Raymond follows up. So we have Raymond chasing him deeper and deeper away from the battle. No more combats here. Balin is 1, but he's way far away from the fight. And then we have Saladin squaring off against King Guy over here. So let's see what happens in that fight. So, nice picturesque view of the battlefield. As we move down here, well, we'll start with brave King Guy, who is taking on the lone skirmisher in the middle of the field. So we have Guy is going to be a 4 versus foot. So let's get our 4 out there. The skirmisher, normally a 1 versus mounted. Hitting the flank, he's going to be a 0. So we have our dice. Oh, and skirmishers are not shattered in the open, but they already have such a low combat factor. Chances of doubling are pretty high usually. We have a 9 to a 3, so he is doubled. That's going to put our Knight General forward, doubling the skirmisher, and he's dead. So we've killed the skirmisher, and the Knight General is now headed in the correct direction towards joining the rest of the fight. That also puts Saladin 3 more points towards a breaking, so it's going to get a little bit hairy here in the center. So our next combat, which is somewhat unconnected, so we might as well run it. It's unconnected to the foot fight down here. We have a knight, which would have been a 4, goes down to a 3 because of the overlap from Saladin. Our elite cavalry, which would have been a 3, goes down to a 2 because of the knights on their flank. And they don't have their usual escape route available to them because they are wrapped. So we'll roll that one. Uh-oh. So we have a 6, 8 to 5. Well, they rolled their way out of it. So they're going to bounce these guys, and they're going to bounce the Hospitallers, and they didn't double, so they stay where they are, but they did roll out of that trap. Well, this one's not connected to the one on the end, so let's go ahead and do this next. we have, would have been a 4 versus mounted. They go down to a 3 because they are overlapped on this side. And then we have our Elite Cav, and the Elite Cav are going to be a 3, but they're overlapped as well, so they're going to go to a 2. And these are dangerous to the Elite Cav because they have missiles, and they can actually kill them if they double. So let's see what happens here. And and they do. So the archers, doubling the Elite Cav, charging forward. Elite Cav are dead. This tally's not going to go well for Saladin. And then we have our combat on the end where we have the Javelin Cavalry, which are hit in the flank, which takes them from a 2 versus mounted down to a 1. And the Horsebow, which are a 3. And let's roll this one. Okay, so we have a 5 to a 5. So that's a lock. Okay, so let's take a look at Saladin's forces. Now this is a pretty significant pip roll for Saladin's command because his command is demoralized and he's busted up into a lot of groups. And this could be the end of the Saracen army at this point if they don't do well. So let's see what we get. Oh, I don't even know why I'm rolling that one. It doesn't matter. Fortunately, he gets a 6. The other command gets a 3. So with 6 command points and his demoralized condition, he can do some things, but he is going to have some trouble holding the command on the table. So at this point, well, he's definitely going to have to get some sort of kills over here. So more than likely, he'll use 1 command pip to bring this mounted in here. Probably another command point to attack these knights. So he's going to go in like this for 1, and because he's in zone of control of 2, he can pick the target, so he's going to go forward. So we're going to try and take that knight out. This time he won't be able to fall back. So that's 1, 2, 3. He has to give commands to other units. This one's already in combat. He technically doesn't have to give a command here. He could turn to face, thus forcing the combat on the to the front. However, what he's probably going to do is use that command pip somewhere else because this won't run because it's in combat. But we're going to do this fight first and try and bust this off of the unit so that he doesn't die. So he may just give this guy an order to hold, but he could also try to bring this guy in and kill somebody. If he hits the knights in the flank, he'll be a 3 down to a 2 for a demoralized command, but these knights will still be a 4. The knights can't kill him in a straight fight. He could double the knights. I don't think it's likely. The archers are normally a 4. They're going to be down to a 3 with this overlap. I think at this point, we're going to try and get lucky and see if we can get the archers. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 commands. He doesn't have enough command pips to save these guys. So they're going to end up routing. He can't turn that guy because of zone of control. I think that's about all that he can do. That's all of his troops that are available. So he had 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, yeah, he can give a command. So he's going to give a command to this group to advance just a little bit so that they can get in line of sight. They don't really want to get that much closer to the enemy, but 2 command pips will allow him to command them, even though when they were out of sight, they were out of range, but now they'll be in line of sight and they'll be probably in range. So he'll move them up to there. So he's managed to hold all of his units on the board. Oh, my mistake. He's going to use that 1 command pip to hold this guy. He's not in combat, but if he doesn't give him a command, he's going to actually pull back. So this guy's going to stay. So these guys will perform route moves. So they will fall back, turn around, and they're going to run pretty much the edge of the board right now because they both move about 5. So they're going to be pretty close to the edge of the board. All right, so that's all of Saladin's commands. Up front here, he's going to move forward. That's going to force a snap to the closest fit. So that's 1 command. Looking at the tactical situation, that's going to potentially, if they can get a kill there, that will break Raymond's command, which would be all the more sweet if this guy happens to die as well, because if they kill the commander with a broken command, it becomes a big problem. That's their only chance to really maybe save the situation. So that was 1. That was 2. With the remaining command pip, that's not really that great of a trade there, because we lose our ability to run away with this guy behind us, so we probably won't push in here. Coming off the hill, not that exciting. We do have 1 more horsebow over there that could engage. He doesn't have much to lose, so I think he will engage there. So that's 1, 2, 3. All right, so we've got our new tactical situation. So now we're going to roll our combat dice and see what happens. So we're going to do the easy ones first. So we've got our knight on horsebow, pretty straightforward. This particular knight, though, is from Guy's command. So we're going to roll our blue die versus our white dice. Blue for the knight. Combat factor of 4 is a 10, and 2 plus 3 is a 5. So he will panic the horsebow. He can't kill him. Which is one of the reasons why the horsebow was willing to take that shot, was because it put them. They're going to turn, so they turn 180 after falling back, and they're going to run their full move, which is going to be 5 plus 3 is 8. So we're going to use this gauge. Another 3. So that puts these guys all the way back, almost off the edge of the board. Probably puts him out of the remainder of this game, and he's going to move forward 1 base step. All right, so that's our knight versus horsebow. So now we have a knight who's not in such a good position, 2 versus elite cav, which are going to be a 3. And for this particular one, we now have our white die versus our black die. This is coming out of Balin's command, or out of Raymond's command. Rolling our dice. Uh-oh. So he's got a 4 to an 8, doubled. Once again, that's that panic move, which is good for the knight, sort of. He'll charge in, he backs up, he turns around, and he's going to run a full 8 away from the knight, which he will stop when he gets up here to the horns, because he hits the rough terrain from the horns of Hattin. So as you can see, the knight chased him off, made a hole. Not sure he's going to be able to do much to exploit it. He's just barely holding his own, but that knight definitely has been earning his keep. So now we'll move over to the other side of the battlefield, which is really critical. because it's Raymond, who has charged deep into enemy territory and is in trouble, potentially. Well, he starts at a 5, Knight General. He goes to a 4. His enemy is a Horsebow, who goes to a 3. So we have a 3 to a 4, but the Knight General cannot retreat because of the guy covering his flank. So now, rolling our dice, and we have a 5 versus 6. So we will back this guy off. He bounces. And we will back off the Horsebow, who will actually enter the village, which is considered rough terrain or difficult terrain for them. So, and the knight will come forward again. So Raymond will charge forward again, and they'll fight again. Now this time, the results for the Horsebow will be as if they are in rough terrain, even though the combat hasn't quite entered the rough terrain. So that'll be an interesting one if we get to that. Let's head over and see how Saladin's going to make out with his mess over there. Okay, we'll start with Saladin himself. Well, at least the command that he's assisting with here. So our demoralized elite cav will start at a 2 and remain at a 2. Our knight will start at a 4 and go to a 3 because he does have an enemy on the flank. And we'll be rolling our red and our blue dice. So red for the Saracens. Uh-oh. We got a 3 to a 5. Okay, so that will back the Saracens off. The knight will charge forward, and that'll also back Saladin off because he also was part of that combat. Okay, well that didn't go so well for them, but nobody died. Next, we have our archers. So we have the elite cav, which started a 3 and dropped to a 2. And we have our archers, which started a 4 but dropped to a 3 because of the overlap. But the archers are shattered by the elite cav, and the elite cav can be killed if the archers double them. We have a 4 to a 6. Archers are shattered. So that's a little bit of good luck for the Saracens. So they charge forward. Whoops, I'm sorry. They didn't double them. They shattered them. So shatter is different. So shatter means that they were killed by being beat by 1, so they won't charge forward. So they stay in that position. But that does kill the archers. So let's move down to the end of our line. It is the Saracens bound, the turn. So the Saracens get to decide whether they want to attack here or fight here. Because of the flank contact, they're going to fight here because if they can win in any way, shape, or form, they can get this guy off of this guy and possibly save his bacon. So let's see. So for our Crusader Horsebow, hit in the flank, this does not count as an overlap against the Crusader. He would have been a 3, he's going to go to a 2. Our Saracen Horsebow would have been a 3, but they are in a demoralized command, so they're also a 2. So our demoralized command makes us an even fight, but we're just looking for a little bit of luck here. Don't get it. So we have a 6 to a 3. The Horsebow doubling the Horsebow means that they're dead. Okay, so that kills them. Because they're facing this way, they don't charge forward. Okay, I want to go back to this combat for 1 second because I kind of skipped over this a little bit quickly. So we had this Saracen Horsebow come in and make the attack, and I mentioned that Saladin was trying to do this because he wanted to stop this combat from happening. Well, there's a couple of ways to do that, but by engaging in combat, and because it's the Saracens' turn, they decide the order of the combat. So there are theoretically 2 possible combats here, but the Saracens, of course, are going to pick this combat. By picking this combat and fighting it, win or lose, they've stopped this combat from happening this round. So even though, now if they'd won and they'd pushed this guy off or they destroyed it, that obviously would have saved the Javelin Cavalry. But even though they lost, this Horsebow can only fight 1 combat per round Each element in Triumph, it's spelled out in the close combat phase, can only fight one combat. So they've effectively stopped this combat for one more turn. So they stay in contact. If they will fight again in the next round of combat, but it saved him for one more turn. So just wanted to clarify that. And now we've completed the Saracen turn, and we're going to move on to the Crusader turn, and the Crusaders are going to see if they can wrap this battle up potentially in this next round. Okay, rolling for the Crusader command points. Well, that's pretty good. So we've got 5 for Guy, we have 2 for Balin, and 6 for Raymond. So that'll be very helpful. So let's start with Guy's command. Saladin's definitely in trouble, and I think he wants to keep the pressure up because even though he's going to have command control problems, we can't count on that. And he's got a couple of places where he could make something happen. I think we're going to move the Templars, or sorry, the Hospitallers in. That closes or wraps this unit here up, so they are in trouble. And remember, they're fighting demoralized now, so they're going to be down 1 anyway. And then using some of his other pips, I think he's going to try and move some knights over here to take some pressure off of Raymond's force. It looks like, yeah, he can actually get not quite into combat. Well, can he get into combat? Yes, he can. No, not quite. So he can get to the point where he can at least put this guy into a zone of control. Can't quite make it into combat. Let's see if we can bring this other knight back to help. So what we'll do is we'll position these guys. I want to keep him in zone of control, and I want to bring... The king is going to come this way so he can actually be in position to help, because that's where we're in the most trouble. Raymond is over on the other side. He's kind of in deep trouble there. He doesn't really want to fight at this point or engage, because if he risks losses, his command could break, but he's definitely got to try and defend himself as best he can. The knight that's in the middle of the line... Well, this was a rather interesting move. All right, let's finish up with Guy's command. So 1, 2, 3. He's got 2 more left. With the remaining 2, let's see. Can this heavy foot? Yes, the heavy foot can get to there. So we're just going to continue to put pressure on Saladin's forces. Heavy foot here. If he loses, that would put him in trouble because he would turn to there and back up, and he would have a problem getting back, falling back. We've already got this command here. Do we want to go in on that command? Probably not. Not a big advantage to that. I think they'll stay where they are. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4. For lack of anything else to do right now with his command, I think he's going to bring the spear this way, just in case. All right, so that's Guy's points. Now let's look. I was looking at this a minute ago, and something just popped into my realization that by moving this knight here, he has a chance. Basically, he can turn because remember I talked about how knights want to panic the horsebow. So by panicking that horsebow away, he created an opportunity where he has a chance to turn and potentially kill this horsebow. So he would be a 4 hitting the horsebow on the side. This guy's only going to be a 3 down to a 2. I think I would take that, even though it's risky, because if he loses, he's dead. But if he loses, he's dead. I've got better odds, so we'll try it. So loser dies in this particular fight. Raymond's got a lot more points to use. The question is, where does he want to use them? These are Raymond's troops as well. I think we're going to go put pressure on Saladin himself and put him into zone of control. Can't quite get into combat. But we had 1 command pip there. 2 command pips here. This puts Saladin in zone of control, locks him down a little bit so he can't go running around into the back of the knights, which is very useful. And I think, let's see, Guy had 1 more command pip. I think these are his bow levy, and they are. So he's going to bring, can't get up in formation, but he can at least get there. Okay, so now that's Guy's last command pip. 1, 2, 3. Raymond still has a couple more command pips to use. I don't see anything I want to do over there. I don't really want to go into that fight. Chances are he could lose somebody and he's not necessarily going to kill anything. So I think that we'll stay where we are. I do think that I'm going to move this archer because I have the command pips to do it. I'm going to put the archer someplace heading in this direction so that it can be heading over here in case any of these horsebow get through. I do have a horsebow on the loose over there. I don't like that, but I don't have enough. I don't have any way to deal with it really. So I think we're going to have to just take that one as is for now. You know, the smart thing might have been to turn this knight this way to zone of control that horsebow. But we're going to go for the kill instead and see if we can make that happen. Okay, so that's it for theirs. Now we have Balin. Balin doesn't have a lot of really great or useful options at this point. He's kind of far out of the battle. This would be a really useful time to use a march move, but unfortunately he's only got 2 command points, which is probably just enough to turn these knights around, and they can head through. They can go through the archers, so they're going to head right through there. Can we get a column? Yeah, we can make a column actually. So we're going to make a column of knights. So with his 2 command pips, he's going to make a column out of his knights, and he's going to try and head back over to where the battle is, since he's defeated his enemy on this end of the board, and they're all gone. One might question at this point whether he should just leave, but it looks like the Crusaders are winning, so he's going to come join the battle. So next, let's do our combats. We're already over here on Saladin's side, so let's roll out these combats, and then we'll go on from there. So Saladin versus Balin's horsebow. We have the horsebow at a 3. Still. Our Jaf Cat, hitting the flank and demoralized, would be a 2, is going to go to a 0. So once you start to get to demoralized commands, it gets really rough. And we have a victory for the Crusaders horsebow. These guys would turn, and then they would fall. They can't fall back. They're destroyed. And we doubled. Because we doubled, we're also going to charge forward. End up right about there. Next combat is here. We have a 3 for the heavy foot. Elite cavalry starts at a 3, demoralized, goes to a 2, and hitting the flank goes to a 1. That's why the reason why we took that shot. Plus, it's one of the few times heavy foot can actually get them because they're trapped. So rolling those dice, we have a blue die for the heavy foot. The heavy foot win with a 5 to 2. They also double them, but it won't. What will happen here is they'll turn, and when they go to fall back, they've got a unit behind them that's blocking them, not lined up, but they're going to be destroyed. Because the heavy foot doubled, of course, they will also charge forward. So things are starting to fall apart quickly for the Saracens. The Crusaders may actually cut their way out of this trap. Next combat, our Knights versus our Elite Cavalry with support from the Hospitallers. So the Knights are going to be a 4. The Elite Cavalry would be a 3. Down 1 for demoralized, down 1 for hitting the flank. They're going to be, well, for overlap, so they're going to be a 1, and they are also dead. So they're dead. Knights charge forward, as they always do. Plus they were doubled. So, yep, Saladin's command is evaporating quickly. Interesting development. So we have combat over here, where we have Raymond fighting the horsebow that has no retreat. Raymond's knights have a 4. The horsebow with no retreat, not in a demoralized command, so they started a 3. They're hitting the flank. That takes them to a 2. So we'll roll this one. Black die for the knights. Uh-oh. 5 to 5, lock. So the knights managed to not die, which is pretty useful. That turn the other direction and not engaging combat is looking a lot smarter now, but we didn't do that. Let's go to the other end of our battlefield, and we'll see if Raymond can back these guys right off the table, which is where they're headed. Okay, so I want to take a minute to go over this last combat here, because we've been doing the horsebow knight interaction, and when horsebow are doubled by knights, they panic. So that's their special move. So I'm going to pull out the QRS. I pulled out the rules earlier. We'll pull out the QRS. So remember on that, if doubled, stand is destroyed. Exception, panic. Horsebow or elite cav, and in open terrain, knights or cataphracts. So they only get the panic ability if they're in open terrain. So in this particular situation, the combat edge, where the two bases are connected, touching each other, that edge doesn't touch the difficult terrain. They are not in difficult terrain for combat, but the rear of the horsebow unit is in difficult terrain. So they don't have panic right now. They will be destroyed if they are doubled in combat. It doesn't affect their combat because the edge is not there, so they are a 3. The knights are a 5. Let's roll this one off, and we'll see what happens. And we have a 6 plus 5 is 11 to a 9. So once again, they will continue to push back. Be interesting if we if we were to continue this combat. It would be interesting to see what happens, because now on the next round of combat, the knights have charged in, and they now the combat edge is in the difficult terrain. And what's interesting about that is when knights lose in difficult terrain, they're dead. Fortunately for Raymond, we don't have to find out what happens in the next round, because it might not go well for him, because they'll both have combat negatives, they'll both have modifiers, and he won't like the loss. But we've now actually completed our battle, and the reason we've completed our battle is because the Saracen forces, when we add up the 48 points from the loss of the unit that was evaporated on Balin's end, and we add up the losses that Saladin just had in this round, add up to 78 points. So half of the army of the Saracen command has been destroyed. So as you can see, Crusader losses in Balin's command, heavy but not enough to break him. Crusader losses in Raymond's command, heavy but not enough to break. Just one kill shy of breaking. Guy did pretty well, didn't lose too many. But we had, I'm sorry, not 78, we actually had 82. So Saladin's forces exceeded the 72-point half point. So Saladin has been broken. The Crusaders have managed to cut their way out of this trap. Unfortunately for them, they're still thirsty in the desert, and Saladin probably has a lot more troops off in the desert, but we have replayed this battle, and in this particular case, the Crusaders have managed a victory. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it gave you guys a good idea of how knights and horsebow interact with each other, along with elite cav, plus some Jaf Cat as well. Look forward to the next video, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Once again, my name is Rod Kane, and this game is called Triumph.